The Real Housewives of Atlanta debuted in 2008 and immediately became a hit thanks to the presence of the breakout star Nene Leakes. Nene would continue to grow as a pop culture icon as the years went by and become a highly regarded and beloved figure in the reality TV landscape. However, as time went by, the public's perception of Nene would turn from a fun-loving, quick-witted, and entertaining figure that they loved to watch to an egotistical, narcissistic, and selfish villain that they hated to hate. In this video, we will be going through Nene's time as a peach holder on The Real Housewives of Atlanta to try and see where along the way did her star come crashing down. When we're first introduced to Nene, it is very clear that she's not like the other ladies on the show. She has a big personality and is not afraid of being loud and over the top for the sake of keeping appearances or being classy. She's herself and she doesn't really care about what anybody else thinks. During this and the next 3 seasons, the show heavily revolves around her and her friendships with Kim and Sheree, with her being the center of the entire situation, which gives her plenty of space to become the main star of the show, which she did. By the time the show begins filming, Kim and Nene have been friends for about 3 years and their friendship is very strong. Meanwhile, Nene and Sheree have known each other for about 7 years and are currently in the outs with each other after they had an incident in a club. Though by the way they talk about it, it seems like they were never really true friends, they were more like frenemies. Kim's and Nene's friendship quickly dwindles after Kim decides to become friends with Sheree, and for a while Nene doesn't interact with either of them while they become best friends. Nene ends up crossing the line for Kim after she gets wasted and makes up a song making fun of her.
I know I said I'm 29, but I know I'm really 80.
So their friendship officially ends for the first time.
I can't believe you talked about me. You have no class. You are so evil. Don't ever call me again. You are a low-budget bitch.
And she spends the entire season having to hang out with Deshaun, which nothing comes out of that because Deshaun is super boring. At the end of the season, all of the women and their families have dinner together, and Nene says that she will never be friends with Sheree again, and that she feels that she's been manipulating Kim into being more angry about the song than she would have otherwise. She also talks with Kim, and they end up agreeing to sit down to fix things, which never ends up happening, and Nene refuses to apologize for anything, as she doesn't feel that she did anything wrong, something that will become a recurring thing with her throughout the show and would eventually lead to her downfall. As I said, she and Kim never actually talk about anything, and rewatching the show opened all wounds, so Nene demanded that Andy give the show a reunion so that she could confront Kim, and of course, they went at each other's throats.
Close your legs to married men. Close your legs to married men.
Excuse
you heard
me?
it? Close your legs to married men.
During this season, we also get to know about her personal life, which I think is also a big part of why so many viewers were endeared to her, as she had a very tragic story that you could either relate to or feel sorry for. We learn alongside Nene that the man who she thought was her father really isn't, and she kind of has to go through this whole process all on her own. Her supposed father, Curtis, doesn't seem to have any empathy or sympathy for her. Her youngest son is still too young to really understand what's going on. Her oldest son is a mess. Her husband doesn't agree with her getting a DNA test and learning that he wasn't her father. Lisa and Deshaun are new friends, so she probably didn't feel comfortable telling him about this. And the people who knew her for the longest, Kim and Sheree, have joined forces to shit on her every chance they get. Nene starts to reap the benefits of her newfound stardom pretty quickly, and in season 2, her career starts to become a very important point of her storyline. She collaborates with the photographer Derek Blanks to work with the other ladies in an alter ego photo shoot, and with a writer to release a biography, thanks to which we learned that on top of not really having a father in her life, her mom also wasn't around much since she spent most of her time in New York working, while Nene was raised by her aunt. While she's touring her hometown with her uncle and the ghostwriter, Nene's uncle gets a phone call from a man who is now claiming that he's her biological father. She agrees to meet him, and she instantly knows that he is her father because he looks exactly like her son. They don't talk much, but they do end up agreeing to keep in touch. However, this becomes a little bit difficult because Greg, Nene's husband, is completely against this and thinks that he's trying to take advantage of her. As far as her relationships with the other ladies, she's still the center of all of it, as she and Kim had still not sat down to talk about anything that happened, even though it seemed like they really wanted to do it, and she and Sheree are back as friends, given that Sheree is no longer friends with Kim. When the 3 of them eventually go to have dinner, Sheree and Kim end up having a huge fight that gets physical and everything because they're accusing each other of saying bad things about Nene, but also denying that they said anything.
I felt the need to tug on her wig. I did not try to pull it off. I did not want to pull it off. I just wanted to shift it a little bit.
The biggest point of contention between Nene and Kim this season is Kim's debut single. Kim started a music career in the last season that Nene relentlessly mocked her for. However, for some strange reason, she agreed to record a song with her, which causes them to have a huge fallout after Kim decides that she no longer wants her in the song. When she tells Nene, you can imagine how she reacted. She was pissed, and she ends up having a huge blow up, not only with Kim, but also with Kandi, which ends their friendship again.
Have a good night. We wish you all the best on the song. We're all gonna buy it. Thank you.
They avoid each other for a while, but they end up having an out-of-camera incident after Nene was told by other housewives from other franchises that Kim was talking badly about her. So she confronted her, and according to Kim's side, she swatted Nene's hand away, didn't really touch her, but Nene launched at her neck, while Nene maintains that Kim also hit her. They have a conversation about this, which goes really bad, and they end up saying that they will never be friends again.
There's no rehashing anything.
Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. Get out of my life.
She also starts beef with a new cast member, Kandi. I don't know why, but Nene just doesn't like her and is constantly throwing jabs at her. Maybe it was because she became friends with Kim, or maybe because she was famous before the show and definitely the biggest name in it. I'm not sure, but she's always trying to go at it with her. The thing is, Kandi just kind of brushes her off and ignores her until, of course, Nene gets all in her face and starts yelling at her after she finds out that she will no longer be in the song. They don't see each other for a while until Sheree has her fashion show, and Nene basically demands an apology from Kandi, which she, of course, does not get, and they end up on bad terms.
She thinks that I owe her an apology. Good thing she don't get paid for thinking.
At the reunion, everything's back on track. She and Kim are not friends necessarily, but they're back on good terms. She and Kandi cleared things up as well, and overall seems to be in a much better place with everyone. This continues into season 3 with Nene being cool with Kandi and Sheree from the reunion, being friends again with Kim, getting along very well with new cast member Cynthia, and having an okay-ish relationship with the other new cast member Phaedra. Everything here is fine, but her family life is in shambles. For starters, she basically kicked her oldest son out of the house after he decided to drop out of college, didn't get a job, and then got arrested after being found with some Mary Jane while visiting a friend in prison. Secondly, and most importantly, her marriage with Greg is completely breaking down. The problem is that his business isn't doing well because of the recession, and she has basically become the breadwinner in her family with her newfound fame. So this has caused a strain in their marriage. To top this off, he's been hiding things from her, and she finds out that he apparently borrowed $10,000 from her friend Dwight and hasn't paid him back. When she confronts him about this, he tells her that what actually happened is that they invested $500 each on a business that went bust. However, she's still pissed at him that he went behind her back to ask her friend for money, and she ends up having a huge fight with Dwight over this.
Let me know, friend. Let me know. Let me know. You better watch your hands.
Get out of my
You better
face.
watch your hands.
Get out
You
of
better
my
watch your hands.
In order to try and feel a little bit better, she decides to get some procedures done. Nothing crazy, just a little nose contour, a liposuction, and a breast reduction. She says that her relationship with Greg is in a better place at this point, but he doesn't visit her at the hospital, and even when she goes home, he's not there, apparently because he didn't support her decision to get surgery. As I mentioned before, Nene is very close to newcomer Cynthia, so she opens up to her about the problems that she's been having with Greg and tells her that she thinks that they might not make it. Days later, Nene decides to invite Cynthia and her boyfriend Peter to have dinner at her house, and during that night, the two women slightly tease Greg and he gets pissed. So they have a huge blowout, and afterwards, Nene tells Cynthia that Greg has been sleeping in the basement, that she wants a divorce from him, and insinuates that he's cheated on her before. Because of all of this, Nene decides that she needs to become more independent financially, so she uses her fame to get a job at a news station interviewing celebrities. While her life is falling apart, having a job seems to be something that's bringing her a lot of joy. However, during her first day of work, she finds out that Greg had an interview with a radio host, and he said that they were having troubles because the fame got to her head, that he had given her $300,000 to start her career and that he wanted it back, as well as announced that she had filed for divorce. This is her final straw with Greg, and she decides that there is no turning back in their relationship. At the same time, her friendship with Cynthia and Peter shows some cracks after the latter tells her that Peter is not happy with them talking so much. When they see each other at an event, he basically ignores her, and when she asks him if they have a problem, he goes off on her.
Nene, I don't have no problem with you. I don't know why you think I got a problem with you. If I have a problem with you, I don't have no problem saying I have a problem with you.
Cynthia and Nene stop talking for a while until they get together at Kim's house, and Cynthia apologizes for what happened and gives her a friendship contract. She would later go on to claim that it was a joke, but it seemed quite serious at the time. Eventually, Peter pulls her aside and they agree to move on from the situation. For the next couple of weeks, her life continues to go well, and she works on her first segment for her show by interviewing Jermaine Dupri. And this is when problems start back up because she makes a comment about Kim's age and her music, which obviously upsets Kim, but she still invites her to see her perform for some reason.
Is it easier to get an artist in the music game when they're young, or can they wait till they get Kim's age? She's like 30-something.
Things continue to go downhill for them because Nene, being who she is, of course, immediately after the performance mocks Kim.
You know, the song is playing, you know, with her voice on the track, and she's singing to it. That's like how the talent shows are at my son's school.
And when she tells them that she wants her assistant to accompany them to their trip to Miami, everything hits rock bottom when Nene gets super angry, snaps, and has to be restrained by Candy's assistant, making this the biggest argument that they've ever had.
You're dumb. Me like her. This is not sweet, okay? And this is not
Nene says that she wants to leave and stay in a hotel, but they do end up staying at Kim's friend's house, and they ignore each other for the most part until Nene decides to invite her friend Diana to the trip, which makes Kim mad because the whole argument started over her having Sweetie, her assistant, there with her. So they start to argue again, and their friendship is completely over by the end of the season. Starting season 4, Nene's newfound fame after being in Celebrity Apprentice has definitely got into her head, and she's really full of herself, believing that she's the only cast member that is truly successful and that everyone else is jealous of her. She starts the show getting into a fight with Sheree after Sheree accuses her of trying to get her fired from an event that they were doing together. Nene says that she was not the one who made the call, but the guy in charge, Tyrone, says that it was her, and they end up having a huge fight, with her biggest takeaway from the situation being that Sheree is jealous of her fame, money, and success.
While you were running your mouth with him, I was running to the bank, sweetie, and depositing a Trump check. Honey, Donald Trump.
As for Kim, Nene and Kim ignore each other for the first half of the series. They finally are made to speak during dinner by Candy's mom, who forces them to say hello to each other, but that's it. Nene says that there is no change that they will ever be friends again, and they don't interact for the rest of the season. During this season, Nene also makes a new ally and friend in Marlo after Phaedra and Sheree try to stir the pot by claiming that Nene dated her boyfriend. However, Nene denies this, and after Marlo makes Kim uncomfortable by mentioning Big Papa, she and Nene get together for brunch and become best friends. We see their friendship develop when the women take a trip to South Africa, and the cast is divided into the smalls, which are Phaedra, Candy, and Sheree, and the talls, which are Marlo, Nene, and Cynthia. Marlo is not very well liked by the other ladies, who think that she's loud and superficial, but Nene really goes to bat for her and defends her every chance she gets. And because of this, she ends up being in the middle of a huge fight between Marlo and Sheree, kind of playing peacekeeper. As far as her personal life goes, she officially separates from Greg, but she says that she doesn't know if she will be able to bring herself to sign the papers after her son tells her that he doesn't want to visit his dad and doesn't want to live in separate homes. She ultimately decides to move forward and signs the divorce papers, though by the time the reunion comes, she says that she wouldn't be against a reconciliation. Business-wise, she is better than ever. She starts to work on opening a lounge. Now, I don't think this lounge ever actually opened, but from the business meeting, we get some very funny scenes because of her business partner, John, who is trying to pursue her.
Okay. Whatever that means. It's getting weird. But I still need to get this watch.
She also gets a role on Glee and says that she's considering moving to LA at least part-time so that she can continue her career in entertainment. Season 5 is kind of boring for Nene as far as being an entertainment character on the show goes, but it's peak of her Hollywood career and her family life. Early on the season, Nene, Greg, and their youngest son moved to LA so that she could film the new normal, and she would come back to Atlanta every once in a while. However, she never gets into any drama with anyone. She was just informed of what happened. She made a shady comment here and there, and then she would leave. The only real drama that she has during this season is when she invites all the women to LA to visit her new home, and when they get there, they're all super tired and they end up showing up super late to Nene's house, so she gets upset and doesn't let them in. However, by the next morning, she's over it, and they go on a girls' trip to Vegas with no problem. By the end of the season, Nene says that her life has come full circle from the previous year and she's back on top in every sense. Her career is continuing to skyrocket and her family life is better. Her son has a baby and she gets engaged to Greg again by the end of the season. As far as her relationship with Kim goes, they see each other for the first time since Kim stormed out from a lunch that they were having while planning the couples trip, and Nene says that she knew Kim would leave the show because she didn't seem like she wanted to do it anymore. They wish each other the best and they hug it out. Season 6 starts a bit slow for Nene, but she eventually becomes all the source of the drama, and I would say that this is the true beginning of the end for her. During the first half of the season, Nene moves back to Atlanta after her TV show gets canceled, she remarries Greg, and overall her career takes a huge step back during the season. The only thing that she really does is start a clothing line, but we don't see much of that. As far as her relationship with the ladies, she's in a pretty good place with everyone except for Kenya, who is upset with her for having invited her ex to her wedding and not reaching out to her when she got evicted, while Nene is upset that Kenya didn't call her while she was planning her wedding, but they eventually talk about this over brunch and they agree to move on. During this point, given her good relationship with everyone, she's kind of the glue of the group, so she decides to hold an intervention of sorts between Kenya and the rest of the women, since nobody likes Kenya, but it doesn't really do much to help them get along. Later on, she invites all the ladies to go to a trip to Savannah, and during the trip, we also start to see the first cracks in her friendship with Cynthia, after the latter tells the group that her 13-year-old daughter has a boyfriend, and she and Peter and the little boy's family are allowing them to date and chaperoning them, to which Nene goes off and says that she would not allow it because teenage girls are fast, which makes Cynthia cry, and Nene doesn't apologize for this. She just mocks her for crying and tells her to get over it. Days later, the women go to a vineyard together and Marlo comes back, but she comes back as a friend of Kenya's, not a friend of Nene's, which will become a big deal. Plus, Cynthia introduces a friend of hers to the group called Natalia, and Kenya says that she knows her husband and that he has referred to her as his girlfriend and common-law wife. This matters because Nene hosts a pillow talk event with all of the women and their husbands. She's jittery the entire time but gets especially angry at Kenya for showing up late, and later during the event she brings up the conversation between Natalie and Kenya, and this results into a huge fight.
Come on, man. Who you What are you?
What happens is that Kenya gets up and walks towards Natalie. Natalie's husband tries to stop her. Then Kenya's friend Brandon tells him not to touch her. And the next thing you know, Apollo is on top of Brandon, giving him a huge beat up. And Nene goes after Kenya, telling her that everything is her fault because she got up from her seat. And they end their short-lived friendship. Kenya still wants them to be friends for some reason that I don't understand. So she decides to throw this charity event and honor Nene during it. When Nene finds out, she gets very angry at Kenya for not personally calling her to invite her. She does end up showing up to the event, but she's clearly very angry to be there and ends up leaving the party immediately after giving a speech.
It's amazing how many good friends I have and don't know about it.
Not before getting into an argument with Peter, who tells her that she should have been more graceful or not show up at all. The next night, Cynthia invites everyone to Peter's birthday party, and Nene and Kenya talk about what happened. Kenya apologizes and they hug it out, but it's clear that Nene is still upset about it, and she ends up leaving the party because she's upset that Kenya and Marlo are buddy-buddy with each other. So the next morning, she tells Portia that Marlo is an opportunist, and when they see each other at a charity event thrown by Cynthia, Marlo ends up chasing her around and yelling at her for ignoring her. This is now the second time that she has fallen out with someone, seemingly because they befriended someone that she didn't like. And I think this time she looked worse because Marlo was incredibly loyal to her and never spoke badly about her on the show. So this made Nene look like she used her friends as soldiers that she would get rid of whenever they did something that she didn't like, which would become a recurring thing with her on the show moving forward. Days later, everyone goes to Mexico, and one of the nights the men and the women separate, and we see Greg calling out Peter for being upset at Nene the day of Kenya's charity event, and tells him that he will give him a pass, but if he does that again, there will be a problem, and they almost have a physical fight. When the ladies arrive, Nene confronts Peter and tells him that he's been behaving like a bitch.
Trying to be a damn bitch.
A week later, Greg invites Peter and Cynthia to have dinner and talk about everything, and Nene says that she didn't call him a bitch, just said that he was behaving like a bitch, but that she doesn't think he's a bitch. And at the end of the conversation, it seems like they're all back on good terms. The reunion is very, very bad for Nene, with basically everyone having a problem with her. The most important thing that happens, though, are that she gets into it with Candy because she wrote some stuff about her mom on her blog.
If I wanted to say that, I would have wrote it. I said what I said.
Okay, well, what you said was some bull.
But you don't like it.
Kenya exposes her for telling Marlo and Cynthia that they basically had to choose between being friends with Kenya and being friends with Nene.
When you decided to shoot with Kenya, that was your choice, and that's where you need to stay.
She sides with Portia when she physically attacks Kenya, and her relationship with Cynthia is officially over. She seems pretty shocked that Cynthia is claiming to be so hurt and disrespected by her because she had already apologized and they had already made up, even going on a trip together after the whole situation happened. So she claims to now understand what's going on, and they both say that they don't know if they can be friends again. Season 7 is more of the same, with Nene going at it with basically everyone in basically every episode and seemingly being miserable to be there the entire time. We meet new cast member Claudia, who is a friend of Kenya's, and when Nene learns about her, she said that she met her in New York and that she's very thirsty. She also leads the charge against Kenya this season after convincing everyone that they didn't need to apologize for the way that they had treated her and claiming that Apollo was lying about everything that happened with Kenya to her Phaedra now that they were basically separated. As far as Cynthia goes, Nene is still very angry at Cynthia, claiming that she felt blindsided during the reunion and that she just randomly ghosted her, while Cynthia claims that she did many things that were disrespectful, which culminated in the end of their friendship. When they finally get together, Cynthia says that she just wants them to support each other, and they end up hugging and agreeing to move on, which leads Cynthia to think that things are back to normal between them. However, Nene tells Greg that she broke her trust and that she's not ready for them to be friends again. Days later, Nene decides to meet up with Cynthia in Kenya to clear things up, and it's basically just a rehash of the previous conversation, with Cynthia saying that she wants to move on and Nene saying that she's not ready yet. Cynthia and Kenya leave thinking that things are fine at the very least, but when they see each other again, Nene refuses to say hello to Kenya, says that she's not friends with Cynthia, and on top of that tells Claudia that the reason why she doesn't care for her is because she's friends with Kenya. This will in turn cause them to have a huge fight in Puerto Rico after Nene makes a shady comment about Kenya.
I made 17 years I've been working. I pay my own bills. I don't have to get on a pole.
Record.
Spell bridesmaids. The S is not silent, honey.
I'm in my 40s.
That's it?
You in your 40s.
I am. We're like 20 years apart.
No, we are not 20 years apart,
Yes.
girl.
When you were my age, you had edges.
What you got, this hair breed, this not in Atlanta. They ain't looking for you.
Oh, you don't like half
They
breeds?
come, you're a whore.
And a few days later, Claudia calls her out for calling her names, mainly a whore, and Nene apologizes. Weeks later, Nene decides to throw a therapy session for all the ladies to try and get everyone to clear the air. However, things don't turn out how she wants them. It's clear that she thought that the therapist was just going to tell the women that they were wrong and that she was right, but when she realized that that wasn't the case, she immediately put up a wall and things just got progressively worse as the girls were asked to tell her what their problem with her is, and she ends up storming out of the session.
Really, go on, because this must be a technique. Then
No. Listen to me. Listen to me.
See you
Hold
later.
on.
The next day, she tells Greg that she felt like she was being attacked and disappears for a bit while working on a Broadway show for 2 weeks, while the rest of the women go on a trip together to Manila. When she eventually comes back, it's clear that Nene just wants to keep the peace because they are at a charity event and she really doesn't want to talk about anything, but Claudia keeps trying to get her to explain herself and she ends up storming off again. During the reunion, Nene remains silent for the most part and seems even more miserable to be there than she did the previous season. We finally get some clarity on what happened between her and Cynthia, and it turns out that Nene wasn't randomly ghosted for no reason. Shocker. They both give their side of the situation and basically say the same thing. They fixed things after they sat down and they continue to be friends. They took a trip to Vegas during New Year's while the season was airing, and Cynthia said something on the show that upset Nene, so she took to her blog to insult her, which of course upset Cynthia, who felt that she should have just talked to her. After that, Cynthia stopped contacting her and allegedly asked to be moved from sitting next to her during last season's reunion. However, Cynthia denied that. Cynthia also says that Nene tried to get her fired by telling Andy on his show that she was boring and didn't add anything on the show, and Nene says that the two of them will just have to move on and do their own thing. I think feuding with Cynthia is the worst thing that Nene could have ever done because Cynthia has always been perceived and shown to be a person who is not confrontational and who is very willing to just move on from things. So for her to hold onto this grudge the entire season, play victim, insinuate that there was something dark about Cynthia, all for it to turn out that this whole time she knew exactly what was the cause of their fallout, it really made her look bad. Especially because Cynthia gave her the opportunity to just move on and she refused to do so. To end the reunion, we get what to me is the most confusing scene in the entire show. The therapist comes back, apologizes, and basically swears allegiance to Nene, which is terrible because he's supposed to be neutral. Nene ends up storming off because Claudia and Kenya try to relate to her with their mommy issues, and she says that she doesn't want to talk about her mom, which no one asked her to do. She ends up crying, and Cynthia goes alongside Phaedra and Portia to comfort her. When she eventually comes back, everyone just starts to tell her that they love her and that she's an amazing woman who's been through a lot, and then the reunion ends with all the women hugging. During season 8, Nene is demoted from being a full-time cast member to being a friend of Cynthia's. That's right, they made up again. Her first appearance is almost halfway through when she visits Cynthia to talk soon after they reconcile their relationship and start to communicate again. A few days later, Cynthia invites everyone to go to Jamaica with her to film a commercial, and Nene shows up as a surprise to everyone, including Sheree, who is also back this season. This makes Kenya very upset because during the time that Nene was away, she and Cynthia had become quite close to each other, and she had no idea that they were communicating at all. Sheree, Portia, and Phaedra tease Cynthia about being best friends with Kenya, but she backtracks and says that she's still getting to know her, which makes Kenya very upset because she feels that Cynthia is throwing her away now that her old friend is back. During their last date, Kenya says that she's upset with Cynthia disrespecting their friendship, and Nene tells her that she will always be around and that her relationship with Cynthia has nothing to do with Kenya's relationship with Cynthia. Nene leaves the show for season 9 but returns for season 10. As for her work life, she gets a spot as a comedian and presenter in Candice's group's tour, but she gets fired after she tells an audience member that she wishes that they would be R-worded after that person told her to kill herself. She starts the season feuding with Portia, and this actually goes back to something that happened in the previous season. Basically, Portia and Phaedra accused Todd and Candy of trying to drug and assault her, after which Phaedra was fired from the show. On an episode of Watch What Happens Live, Nene says that if she could get rid of 2 people, it would be them, and that's the beginning of their feud. Though Nene claims that Portia is actually upset about her giving her advice during the season 8 reunion, and that's why they really haven't talked much since then. Portia made some comments about her during a radio show, and she's upset about that, with Portia claiming that Nene tried to get her fired. She confronts her about this, and Nene denies that she tried to get her fired. Basically, she believes that since she didn't use the word fire and didn't literally call Andy and ask him to fire her, that it doesn't count. Days later, Nene throws an all-white party and we get a long-awaited reunion between her, Sheree, and Kim. They both seem very happy to see each other, and Nene even laughs off a shady comment that Kim makes about seeing her parked in a handicapped spot.
No, it wasn't Brent. I was with a handicapped person.
However, things take a turn for the worse when Kim gets into a heated argument with Kenya and ends up storming out of the party. The women take a trip to San Francisco where things get totally out of control between Portia and Nene, with Nene telling her that it's thanks to her that she wasn't fired after pulling Kenya's hair during the reunion, that she never admits to anything, and she ends up storming off while cursing Portia out.
You Candy over. She had your back, bitch. I got her back, bitch. You her over.
Come on, Nene.
Bitch. She had your motherfucking back, bitch.
Come on.
You sit on your show and lie every day. Your lying ass. But we good. The door is closed. The door is closed.
During this trip, she also finds out that Sheree is dating the Tyrone guy from season 4, who is currently in jail, and she tells the girls that he's a scam artist. She gets asked about him again later on, and she blows up at the girls, telling them to not ask her about him and says that they never dated, which sounds the alarm on Candy because no one ever insinuated that. So she tells Sheree, who lets us know that Tyrone had already told her about whatever relationship he had with Nene. Days later, Marlo invites Portia, Nene, and Cynthia to get together so that Portia and Nene can clear things up, but it's obvious that Nene doesn't care and is not taking things seriously. She sarcastically tells Portia that she apologizes for whatever she feels, and Portia tells her that there is nothing between them anymore. Meanwhile, Sheree invites her and Kim to have dinner together, but Nene doesn't show up. Instead, she calls them and tells them that there are elephants in the room and that they need to have a bigger conversation. The other two say that they don't know what the hell she's talking about and decide to gossip about her, with Kim showing Sheree a video filmed by her daughter of alleged roaches in Nene's bathroom during the white party. Nene ends up inviting all the women to a session with a psychic to clear the air, but nothing gets cleared up. She refuses to tell Sheree what her problem is with her. Kim refuses to collaborate with the psychic, and when she and Nene sit down, Nene tells her that she's not supportive, and Kim accuses her of being on drugs, after which the conversation ends. A few weeks later, Cynthia invites all of them to Barcelona, and in good Kim fashion, she doesn't go. So Nene starts to mock her codependency to her husband. She makes fun of all the alleged health issues that Kim seems to have had in the past that she sees as excuses for her not to do things that she doesn't want to do.
Kim is the only person I know that has had cancer, thyroids, blood clots, open heart surgery, a stroke, and is still walking around here being negative. Swear to God. God is a good honey. She's had it all. She need to have an electric stroller.
Sheree and Portia call Kim and tell her about what's going on, and Portia seemingly innocently tells Kim that she's brave for being a cancer survivor, which alerts Kim to someone talking about her, and they tell her everything that Nene said, after which she sends everyone a long message saying that Nene is a horrible person and showing the video that her daughter filmed and the photo of Nene in a handicap spot.
Nene is sick and disgusting, and I'm not just speaking on the fact that she made fun of a serious health issue I had, but I'm also speaking on the fact she lives in a roach nest.
The only good thing that comes out of this trip for Nene is that she makes up with Portia. In the last episode, new cast member Ava throws a Halloween party, and Nene shows up as an exterminator and Greg as her roach, making her have the last word on the whole situation and pissing Kim off. The reunion is not good for Sheree or Kim, as they both get relentlessly dragged by all of the women at the same time. With Sheree, the biggest issue they had is that she called herself the bone collector, but always protected Kim's bones. Nene specifically gets upset with her because she knew about the roaches video, and for some reason they tried to deny that Kim showed it to her, even though we know that's not true. We saw it on camera. Meanwhile, Kim can barely get a word in during the entire reunion and resorts to lies that the producers debunk immediately with the actual things that happen on TV. Given that she has a problem with everyone on the cast but Sheree, they really don't even let her breathe. I really recommend that you watch this reunion because the takedown of Kim and Sheree is just beautiful to watch. Season 11 begins the final blow for Nene on the show as her entire life unravels before our eyes. Starting out with her marriage, it's been on the rocks for a little bit, and Greg's cancer diagnosis just makes it worse. Nene says during multiple episodes that Greg has been behaving extra mean towards her and that she feels like everyone expects her to be strong, but no one is taking care of her. At some point during the show, she says that she and Greg have been sleeping in separate beds and discussing separation. However, their relationship seems to be in a better place towards the end of the season when he agrees to go through chemotherapy. Though, come the reunion, Nene says that she doesn't know what she's going to do regarding her marriage and that she hasn't gotten over him cheating on her all those years ago. At the same time, her friendship with Cynthia, Eva, Candy, and Portia all dissipate, basically at the exact same time. First, we have Eva. They start the season seemingly being very close with each other, with Eva saying that Nene was like a big sister and asking her to give a speech at her wedding, even though Nene would later go on to claim that they really weren't all that close. She ends up giving the speech, but it's very half-assed, and she ends up leaving the wedding before the reception even begins because she feels overwhelmed by seeing them being in love while her marriage is falling apart. Their friendship quickly falls apart after Nene, Marlo, and her friend Tanya get together, and Tanya tells them that she heard from one of Eva's bridesmaid that basically Eva was broke, didn't have a house, and had bad credit. They agree not to tell her, but Tanya ends up informing her during Candy's restaurant opening, and Eva ends up leaving the party after Nene arrives. Nene calls her and asks her to come back, and Eva agrees to talk to her and requests that she takes off her mic, but she doesn't do it and everything is recorded. Come the reunion, Eva tells her that she feels betrayed, and Nene responds in a nonchalant way, which is her whole mode during the entire reunion. Then we have her friendship with Candy and Portia, which falls at the same time. Nene throws this event at her house, and at some point during the night, everyone ends up in her room. Candy and Portia decide to go to see her closet. Nene tells them to get out in a tone that seems like she was joking, but once the cameraman tried to go inside, she became irate, cursing Portia and Candy out and ripping the cameraman's shirt. We would also learn that she allegedly ripped Portia's belt out of her dress and pushed a producer against the wall, scratched his back, and broke his tooth. They end up talking about this at Eva's wedding, with them telling her that she was aggressive and Nene telling them that they need to support her with everything going through with Greg. And it seemed like everything was fine, but of course it wasn't. And come the reunion, Portia goes hard against Nene and says that she was hurt that Nene did not reach out to her during the course of her pregnancy, and tells her that she doesn't allow people to get close enough to support her. Well, she and Candy argue, but not over this. Instead, they argue over Nene's last friendship to end, which is her friendship with Cynthia. Come the last episode of the season, Nene gets mad at Cynthia at first because Kenya has been making comments about her on social media, and she's mad that Cynthia hasn't told her to stop, even though she has told the other woman not to talk badly about Kenya. So she feels that Cynthia has favorites and is not being fair. That weekend, Cynthia hosts the launch of her wine line, and Kenya shows up at the party, which makes Nene super angry at Cynthia for not telling her that she would be there, and she ends up leaving the party, after which we see a recording of Cynthia calling Candy and telling her that they need to get their story straight about Kenya being at the party. A few days later, Cynthia, Candy, Tanya, and Nene meet up to talk about it, and Candy tells her that she was the one who convinced Kenya to go, while Cynthia says that she did invite Kenya, but she didn't know for sure if she would be there and didn't think that it would be that big of a deal anyways, but ends up apologizing to Nene after she storms off crying. Come the reunion, none of them have spoken since the episode was aired, and Nene feels that the little recording was the proof that they knew all along and were setting her up, so she's super pissed. During the reunion, Portia says that she heard Kenya say that Cynthia did know that she would be there, and Cynthia was recorded telling her boyfriend Mike that she had to pretend that she didn't know Kenya would be there, but she and Candy stick to their story that she didn't know. Cynthia and Portia end up telling Nene that she makes people feel disposable, that she throws away her friends that do things that she doesn't like, that she has forgiven other women in the cast for far worse things, and ends up saying that if she wants to end their friendship over this petty stuff, then so be it. This season was really bad for Nene. People, myself included, really did feel bad for her and understood her frustration with Greg and his cancer, but as things went on, it just seemed like she just saw the whole thing as an annoyance to her life. She really did make the whole situation all about herself and acted like she was the one with the biggest problem out of the two, and she used the whole thing as a crutch to get away with whatever it is that she did wrong. As far as the Cynthia thing goes, even though I think that there are not a lot of people who believe that Cynthia didn't know, Nene still came off badly. Even if Cynthia had known that Kenya was there, there would be no reason why they can't be in the same room without it being a huge problem. I think people just thought that she acted very childish, and again, like she was trying to control and dictate Cynthia's life. Season 12 starts with Nene still being on the outs with everyone but Marlo, only having reached out to Portia and Cynthia to insult them. However, Marlo seems very interested in getting her and the girls to get along again, at least with Cynthia, which almost causes them to have a huge fight because Nene seems to believe that she did nothing wrong and is not interested in initiating any apologies. She literally tells her life coach that she wants a sisterhood, but she doesn't want to apologize. The life coach tells her that that was never going to work, so she decides to go on an apology tour. She first meets up with Candy for lunch, and it seems that they had already talked before this meeting and everything was water under the bridge. Then she goes to Eva while they're on a trip in Toronto. Eva tells her that she felt betrayed by her and that she was upset that it didn't seem like she cared that she was upset. Nene gives her her typical "I'm sorry that you felt that way" apology, and they end up hugging and getting along for the rest of the season. Then we have Portia. Portia was incredibly angry at Nene by the time the season starts because before they started filming, Nene sent her a bunch of messages fat-shaming her while she was pregnant. So she was obviously very hurt by it because she felt that she had been a good friend to Nene and Nene had tried to destroy her at a very vulnerable time. They remain on the outs with each other until they have a trip to Greece when Portia reaches out to her and they finally make up. They have a very emotional conversation, and I think that this was the only time that Nene gave a real apology in the entire show. And I think part of it was that Portia was the one who asked her to sit down and talk, and the fact that she had gone way too far with Portia and she knew it. The last person that she has to apologize to is Cynthia. But the problem is that, as mentioned before, Nene doesn't feel that she did anything wrong, especially considering that after the show aired, Cynthia gave some interviews in which she said that Nene was a toxic friend who made everything about her. Now, Nene also gave an interview in which she called Cynthia weak and desperate, but she, of course, thinks that that interview was just her retaliating and she shouldn't apologize for it. The idea that she did nothing wrong and Cynthia owes her an apology is only reinforced when her friend Giovanna tells her that Cynthia was talking crap about her at a wine cellar, and there is a recording of it. Despite this, Nene sends what seems to be an olive branch to Cynthia the day of her wine cellar opening. However, the next day the letter is leaked to the press, which makes her feel that it wasn't genuine. After everyone finds out about the alleged recording, they assume that the only person who could have done it was Giovanna. But after she denies it, Cynthia decides to believe her for some reason. But Portia, Candy, and Kenya just can't let it go, so they decide to grill her until she breaks and tells the truth, but she sticks to her story that it wasn't her, but it was someone in the group. Eventually, everyone gets together to question her, Marlo and Nene included, and this whole thing just seems like a huge setup from Nene. From the way that I see it, she's been saying for years now that there's a side of Cynthia that we don't see and that she isn't as innocent as we think. So to me, it seemed like she thought that this was her chance to expose her and make herself look better. However, this totally blows up in her face. First of all, she says that there isn't a recording, that there is a voice note or a voicemail of sorts. I don't know why she felt the need to clear that up, but it made her look like she was lying and there was no proof of anything. Then Marlo gets into an argument with Cynthia, and there is just no way for you to look bad if you're arguing with Marlo. Then she tells Giovanna to tell everyone the supposed truth, but Giovanna sticks to her story that she did not record it. At the end, Nene ends up having to beg Cynthia not to leave the room and talk to her. Portia gets into an argument with Giovanna, and Nene ends up almost having a physical fight with Kenya.
Hey, let me tell you something. I'm out of here. I'm talking to them. I'm talking to the girl. This mother, she's trying to comfort me. She got the wrong bitch. She got the wrong mother. She better go on.
Despite the fact that nothing was confirmed, Nene did say that she wouldn't tell Cynthia who recorded her because Cynthia didn't tell her that Kenya would be at the party last year, so she's never gonna get over that. Nene and Cynthia eventually meet up, and it seems like the only person who really wants a resolution is Cynthia. She tells Nene that she throws her friends away and that they both said hurtful things, but Nene says that she didn't say anything hurtful and she refuses to take accountability for any of her actions. She eventually storms off crying again and emotionally manipulates Cynthia into apologizing to her while never equally apologizing for her part in anything. When they go to Greece, Nene tries to fix her last broken relationship, which is with Kenya. Right before the trip, they learn that she's getting a divorce, and Nene ends up giving her a speech about marriage and things of that sort. And Cynthia tells her that she wants the two of them to sit down and talk, but Kenya is really not in the mood for this, so she decides to leave the table, and Nene decides that that's it. She's not gonna try with her anymore. The next day, they go out to eat, and Kenya starts to question Cynthia's wine knowledge, which everyone thinks is very shady, but Cynthia is very passive and permissive of her friends, so after she brings it up, she forgives her, which makes Nene angry, and she says that if it had been anybody else, she wouldn't have let it go so quickly. And she ends up getting into it with Kenya again.
That's why you had to grovel and ask for to be friends with everybody.
Bipolar Kenya, go get your medication. That's why your husband left, bitch, because you're bipolar.
Days go by and they end up meeting again at Candy's baby shower, and they of course get into a fight and have security called on them. Nene's last reunion is very bad for her. It actually reminds me of Kim's last reunion, with everyone going after her and her two allies Marlo and Portia not defending her. It gets so bad that she ends up leaving the reunion twice, since the reunion is virtual, never to be seen again on Bravo television. After she left the show, Nene accused Andy and Bravo of being and accepting racism and went as far as to sue them for workplace discrimination. However, this lawsuit was dismissed, and she has since said that she would be willing to come back on the show, though I doubt that that will ever happen. That was all for today's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!